Welcome to the NFL Draft 2021 Day 2 review show. I'm joined by Ryan. I'm Matthew Turner. How are you guys? How are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I've slept on it, digesting what we saw last night, what we've heard about the draft picks, and where I feel like we're going forward. I feel like we're strengthening the trenches, like we're going to be building a foundation. That appears to be what the ethos is going to be in the draft one. And I've seen very little mention of trading down, so I feel like picks in 4 and 5 could be it. I think we're just going to sit where we are, see who falls, let the chips fall as they may, as it were.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. Right, we've got a good show for you lined up for the next hour. We've got Ryan from the Bear Down podcast in the States on at 12:15, and then we'll be joined by Lee from the 49er Faithful at 12:45. But in the meantime, we're just going to break down rounds 2 and 3, have a brief look at the picks we like, the picks we don't like across the whole thing. So let's kick off with round 2 for the next 15 minutes. So I'll run down those picks very quickly. So from 33, we've got Jacksonville for Tyson Campbell. The Jets had Elijah Moore. Denver for Javonte Williams. Miami for Javon Holland. Philly got Landon Dickerson. New England for Christian Barmore. The Bears for Tevin Jenkins. Atlanta, Richie Grant. Detroit then drafted Onwuzurike. Miami had Eichenberg. Vegas for Merrick. Dallas for Joseph. Jacksonville for Walker Little. Cincinnati took Jackson Carman. Chargers took Asante Samuel. San Francisco took Aaron Banks. Arizona for Rondale Moore. The Giants took Azeez Ojulari. Washington for Samuel Cosme. Cleveland took J.O.K. Tennessee took Dylan Radens. Indianapolis for Deo Odeyingbo. Pittsburgh for Pat Fryermuth. Seahawks took Dwayne Eskridge. The Rams took Tutu Atwell. Kansas City took Nick Bolton. Carolina for Terrace Marshall Jr. New Orleans for Pete Werner. Buffalo for Carl Spasham Jr. The Green Bay took Josh Myers. Kansas took Creed Humphreys. And it was rounded off by Tampa Bay taking Kyle Trask. What sticks out to you as the best and worst of that bunch, Ryan?
Well, I'll go with my worst. We did actually laugh at this time. I do find taking the Josh Myers, the centre. I did find that quite interesting when Creed Humphrey was still, like I said, was on the board at the time, who we thought would be the consensus potential number 1 centre. Like, he was our guy, and I sent him, I believe, to the Packers, but potentially in round 1. So they've seen something in Josh Myers that they feel was worth picking him up when he could have been maybe the 3rd or 4th centre. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is the joint worst pick for me in the round. There was better people on the board. Creed Humphreys obviously went picked later to Kansas, but Myers made mistakes at Ohio State, snapping the ball to Fields. I mean, it was some errant snaps. He's not the fastest in getting to his protections. He's not an aggressive finisher on the line. He needs work. So I didn't understand that at all. But I've actually put him joint with Tutu Atwell, who I like, but just such a reach. And at that height and weight, I'm sure Stafford will like him over the middle, but it's the same worry as Smith for me in terms of potential injury at that sort of weight.
Yeah, whenever you look at someone that was listed at about 148 to 155, you do question durability at the pro level. Even if he thinks he can get away from people, he's going to get hit a lot, especially across the middle. If he's going to be on crossing routes, slants, he's going to be running a lot of slants. So safeties and linebackers are going to be waiting for him. He's going to have to bulk up.
I gave a grade to every pick just as a snapshot, and I gave a lot of A's. Actually, there was a lot of value to be found. A lot of people that slipped. Merrick's one that stands out that we talked about yesterday for Vegas, but also Tevin Jenkins to the Bears. They're having a sneaky good draft so far. Elijah Moore, the second pick off the board to the Jets, strikes. There's definite value there for me. Creed Humphreys, we just mentioned, that's really good. How do you feel about those, and maybe Kyle Trask as well going to Tampa Bay?
I woke up this morning, I've seen a lot of a lot of Tampa Bay fans either confused or unhappy. But the way they need to see it is that Tom Brady could wake up tomorrow morning and go, do you know what? I don't need to do this anymore. Like, I've done it all. they need a successor to that heir. They need someone that's going to be at least willing to sit a year, maybe even two, because Trask might not be ready in a year. And he has got those. He's got the arm power. He's got strength. Like he's going to be a solid pocket passer. And if anyone, Tom Brady's the perfect person to learn off. Whether or not someone should have gone before him if it were too soon. I think sometimes it's never too early to pick a guy that you think is going to take over your franchise in the coming years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you there. It's a pick that makes sense in terms of position and team, but maybe not exact player for me. I'm just not high on Trask. I don't think he has it. I don't think he will have it. I would have gone for one of the next two that we'll probably speak about in the next segment that went in round 3. Is there anyone else that strikes you as an absolutely massive reach that's sitting there? I could see perhaps a couple I have
in mind. Yeah, like I say, I think it was one of them things where I believe that people panicked. I feel like this was a bit of a panic round. We saw all those trades so early on. Like trying to keep up with it was actually really difficult. I feel like one of the don't know, it's hard to say. Let me just glance at the list I've got open.
That's okay. I'll throw a few names out there that I've seen. So I think that Dayo Odeyingbo, edge for Indianapolis at 54, is a huge reach. I think he can be good. He's coming off an injury, which I think has depressed his value. If he can return to health, that I think he'll be a good pick. But he was one in a long line of edge players taken by Indianapolis. They've clearly identified a weakness there. Who else?
I found it weird that they went edge because it's the simple fact they went edge in the first round. So for some reason they seem to like have identified that pass rush is such a clear error. To go back to back edges tells you that they've got some concerns about pressure and generating getting to the quarterback.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The other one.
There's the reach. Malcolm Kuntz.
Sorry, say again. Who?
Malcolm Kuntz.
Oh, yeah.
Buffalo from the. I have never heard of him. I didn't see him on any boards. From the look of it last year, he only got 20, 30 tackles and 5 sacks. So I imagine they must have done some extensive research on him because he caught everyone off guard.
So I had him on my board at 221, and he was picked at 79. So that's obviously
that's a boom or bust. That's a definite boom or bust.
One thing that I found interesting is had Jackson Carman listed as a guard on the draft, but he is a tackle. I don't know whether he'll get kicked inside, but apart from him, the only guard taken in the entire second round was Aaron Banks at 48 to San Francisco. And I do wonder if that's a symptom of the strength of the interior offensive line position. Obviously, it seems like a massive reach. He was 100 on my board, pick 48. But considering the lack of depth at the guard position, that maybe it was just, demand and supply. There wasn't a lot of supply, and they knew what they needed. Wyatt Davis and Kendrick Green also on the board. They went in the third round. Wyatt Davis was ranked 46th, but he comes with injury concerns, and that's going to depress his value. Do you see that as a massive reach for San Francisco?
I do, yeah. Even when you appreciate interior offensive line that highly, I do feel like there was better options. I'm pretty sure, like I said, they took him, did walk a little, and the likes of Dylan Redunds and Eichenberg all go before.
Yeah.
Around that area. So yeah, there was a mix, and I feel like they've taken the last one I would have taken of the bunch, if I'm perfectly honest. Like that, the group that went in that whole round was yeah, I do feel like they potentially may look at that later on when they compare in 2-3 years' time how the rest have developed. I think they'll develop a lot quicker at the pro level. This could be a bit more of a project.
Yeah.
I've got one pick I didn't like in this round. Steelers. They took Pat Freiermuth. Now I was expecting him to go to maybe somewhere like Jacksonville, but when you think about how long they've had tight end issues, we had Jesse James, Heath Miller retired. Like I say, he was the consensus number 2 tight end. There was a big drop off after him.
Mm.
It's called Baby Gronk for a reason. So I feel like that is going to help the line and any potential quarterback. Like I say, it's not for Big Ben necessarily. It's for someone else in the future. But I think that was a nice natural fit.
I think he's a day one starter as well, but perhaps that means the end of the Pittsburgh career of the Detroit Lions' favourite former first round pick.
Yeah, it doesn't bode well, does it, for Mr. Stonehands?
No, I don't think so. I'm just looking through to see if anything else really jumps out at me from this group. I like Boogie Basham going that late, 61 to Buffalo. I think is that a second consecutive edge for them as well?
It was, yes. They took one at
They
took one at Embrook first. Yeah.
So Russo and Basham. I was listening to 2-1 drafts earlier today actually, and they were talking about the first round, and actually that they think that Russo might actually project as an interior defensive lineman at the pros at that size. If he can just bulk up a little bit more, that he could be an interior pressure guy, and then you could stick Boogie on the outside of him, and that's a fearsome twosome that you've got to face.
Does make sense, yeah. Like you say, Russo has got the size, but he's very lean. He's a lean 6'6". He's got long arms, so he does need to bulk up. So I do think you could put him on the interior. He could generate some pressure from the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, it's time to welcome in our first guest of the day, Ryan from Bear Down Podcast. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, guys. Thank you so much for having me. How are you guys?
Yeah, doing really well. We're bleary-eyed this morning after a long day yesterday, but thank you so much for getting up so early for us.
You know what? Honestly, this is easy for me. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. I've got an Australian football club that I watch religiously, and so I'm up. I'm excited. I'm ready to talk NFL. Let's go, boys.
Yeah, so just quickly, you have an Aussie rules team. Who is it?
So it's Port Adelaide. Is when COVID first kind of swept over and we saw that things were going to get canceled. A good friend of mine who happens to be a Vikings fan said, "Hey, let's find a team and support a team together." And we just kind of started learning the rules a little bit. And it's one of those things you get hooked really fast. So whenever I see a fan from the UK, I just identify with you guys so much. Waking up at crazy hours to watch games. The draft and all of those other things, man. I just seriously, my heart goes out to you guys big time.
It's a commitment. It's a commitment, but I enjoy it. I absolutely love it. Just to kick us off, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, Ryan?
So I grew up in Chicagoland, started as a Bears fan in 2001. It was a very magical season. The Bears went 13-3. It was one of those times where the ball just kind of seemed to bounce their way every way imaginable. They just got some unbelievable plays. And it's just, once you get that first, wonderful season under your belt, it kind of hooks you. I've been writing and working for the Bear Down Report for a little over a year now, and we've got the podcast rolling, which is not even a full season yet. But we've been really thrilled, and thankfully we've been able to connect with you guys. Having several members of our crew that are international, and some in the UK, some in Australia, and so just. Just absolutely love the passion of UK fans and, fans from across the world for the love of this wonderful game.
I think the thing about the UK fans is you have to be a bit fanatical to, as you say, do all the things that we do to watch the games. So we're going to come with that commitment as kind of part and parcel, I think. Moving on to the Bears generally kind of last year and the roster holes that you came into the draft with, how did you see those?
So it's really interesting, Matt. If you would have asked me, I would say even maybe 3 days ago, how I felt about the Chicago Bears, I would say the fandom is kind of thinking about walking away from this team, beyond frustrated, just no trust in the management in any way, shape, or form. Just, they were kind of saying, hey, we made it to the playoffs 2 of the last 3 years. Well, you didn't really make it to the playoffs at 8-8. That just the NFL gave an extra playoff game, and you just happened to be, the guys that just made it in. Thank you, Arizona Cardinals. But the thing is, hey, here we are in a significantly different situation. Looking at this team, we thought quarterback obviously was going to be a huge need. Andy Dalton signing was not one that any of us were looking around going, yes, I'm excited about Andy Dalton. The contract even looks, I think, worse now. The fact that they were able to get Justin Fields, considering that the Bears cap situation is absolutely abysmal. I mean, it's bad all across the board. But I think Bears fans this morning are waking up just going, is this still a dream? Is this possible that we were able to draft two guys that Bears fans said, man, if we could get Justin Fields, it would be a dream. But if we got Tevin Jenkins, we would be ecstatic. And somehow, some way, both of these guys are going to be wearing Chicago Bears uniforms. I'm in disbelief. I think there's a general consensus amongst the fans right now that is just like, do we have to apologize to Ryan Pace, the GM, for all of the awful things that we've said about him? And I don't know, man, maybe we do. Maybe.
I mean, I kind of hope you do, because I'm not his biggest fan. It's a worrying level of competence he's showing in the draft, considering the kind of previous history that we've been used to with him. So I do
100%.
wonder whether this is enough to save his job, whether it's going to turn you guys from, I would say, a kind of 50-50 sort of team. You're going to go 8-8, 9-8 sort of thing. Is where I saw you anyway. Is this going to turn you into a team that can properly contend? Maybe not this year, but if you show enough promise that maybe next year you can get there. I don't know whether it saves his job. If you went 9-8 with promise, would you keep him on?
I think that Matt, that's such an excellent point. It's just a lot of Bear fans have said, we believe that this buys Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy at least 2 more seasons, because the chance that you're going to put Justin Fields out game 1 is not as high. I mean, I think the dude is incredibly smart. One of the things that I love about his game is that he improves week to week to week. And I think that he probably could do it. But it seems like the Bears want to start Andy Dalton day 1, which I think, again, it buys these guys a little bit of time in order to keep their jobs and say, hey, look, we've brought in the guy that everybody wanted, the player that every Bears fan has been clamoring for, and we want to develop him. And so I think that Bears brass, like, they don't like to make these big sweeping front office changes, and this just kind of plays to their hand. So, a good friend of mine said Ryan Pace is crazy like a fox, and I believe that there is something to that, where he realized this is the move we have to make in order to keep our jobs, and it seems like that's what's going to happen.
Looks like it's worked. Ryan, you have a few questions?
Morning, Ryan. Thanks
Good
for
morning.
coming on.
Or good afternoon, right, for you guys?
Yeah, afternoon here. My question to you is, in recent times, within the past few days, we've seen some interesting interactions and potential stories coming out regarding the likes of Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Do you feel that there's a shift coming in the NFC North? The tide could be turning, because we saw the Vikings take Kellen Mond, despite Kirk Cousins being on a huge contract. That raises some doubts about his future there, and what's going on with Rodgers' potential retirement. This could be a huge shake-up for the NFC North in general, couldn't it?
Ryan, man, you've just made some excellent points. The first thing is, since you just brought it up, is Kellen Mond. That's a name that I had kind of circled to say, if the Bears draft excuse me, guys, Tevin Jenkins in the first round, I would be excited to see Kellen Mond in that 3rd round, in the start of the 3rd round, have the Bears bring him in at quarterback, a developmental guy, have him learn under Andy Dalton. Obviously, things have turned around. And so through my Viking fan friends, I've said, hey, I think this is a really good signing. I understand that Kirk Cousins has played well at times, but I don't understand the absolute love for him. I think his contract is really prohibiting the Vikings, though Spielman is an amazing GM and knows how to get, the most draft capital and most value that's out there. I kind of have the Vikings as a team that I think is going to be kind of vying for that number 1 or number 2 spot. But Ryan, man, I think you saw it on my face, man. As soon as you said Aaron Rodgers, it's difficult because if I say anything negative about him, it's people think, oh, here's a Bears fan talking negatively about it. But I mean, let's be real about this for a second. You have two Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back in over 30 years, and you have two Super Bowls to show for it. And I mean, Aaron Rodgers is next level. And so this organization has done him absolutely no favors. And what do you do then? You draft a cornerback in round one when your disgruntled MVP has basically said, hey, I want out of this organization. I don't know. I don't know, Ryan. I mean, if it happens, if he leaves, I think it drastically changes the look of the Packers. Sure, they've got Devontae Adams, and you know they've got a strong running game, but aside from that, I don't think that they're a really great team without Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that guy he's one of the best to ever play the game, and without him, that changes the entire landscape of the NFC North big time.
Yeah.
No, I totally.
Sorry,
please. I totally agree, because I also look at the scenario where the players you choose in the draft and the level of protection can irk a quarterback. Look at Russell Wilson. He came out and said, look, if you don't start protecting me, if you let me eat sacks, I want out, which then triggered all these potential Bears rumors. Like I said, it's going to be potentially an ugly relationship going forward. You need to rectify this somehow, don't you?
100%. The only thing I'll also say though to that, Ryan, is when we look at what happened with LaFleur coming in, and we all thought, oh, things aren't going well. There were reports that they were fighting and then they weren't getting along, and then they had 2 trips to the NFC Championship. So obviously, you know, he may be a guy that can put aside his personal feelings on some things to make it happen, and I think that's probably giving Packers fans a lot of hope. But you know, for Lions, Vikings, and Bears fans, we're just, I think, you know, it just would be nice to see the division shaken up a little bit and to see somebody else kind of in front a little bit. I mean, all credit to them. They have won fair and square, and you know, it's been hard to watch them from that position. But man, I think it would be really fun for the NFC North to see things take a different direction.
Yeah, I agree. The thing about Aaron Rodgers, I know we've kind of spent a lot of time on him and not on the Bears perhaps, but just one more thing is, throughout the season, there was a noticeable change in his demeanor. He, in previous years, was a frustrated figure on the sideline. He wore his heart on his sleeve. And then this year, he looked like he was smoking pot all the time. He's like, it's chill, dude. I'm relaxed. I'm just enjoying myself. And then coming out here saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to retire. It's totally at odds with the kind of guy he portrayed throughout the season. I find the difference between the guy he was on the field this year and this off-season really striking.
Yeah, I don't know if he's crossing over into Illinois, because in Illinois, it's marijuana is legal now. So I don't know. It's possible, Matt, that's what's happening in the first place. No, you know, I think it was a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. Hey, you guys didn't give me what I asked for, but I'm still going to be the MVP. You know, again, I'm a Bears fan, but I can respect someone who has an incredible game, and he has an incredible game. You know, if he was wearing a 12 jersey that was in orange and blue, I know that I would be cheering for him very loudly. And if he was wearing Honolulu blue, Matt, I'm sure you'd be cheering for him as well.
Oh, the Facebook groups of people going, should we trade for him? It's like, don't even say the question.
But you're thinking, nobody's going to trade in division. And then you look at what happened with Dallas in round 1 with the Eagle. Like, wait, what? How does this happen in division?
Yeah, it's weird. But I guess to screw over another division rival together is kind of funny, right?
Right,
I love
absolutely.
that. Looking ahead to the draft, obviously you've been super solid so far. The trade up didn't cost too much, just next year's first. I think maybe a late round pick elsewhere. I don't think it was too much. So that must be really encouraging. Is there anyone else that you're perhaps targeting, any position groups that you'd like to see filled in day 3?
You know, it's really hard, Matt, because you're thinking, hey, in an ideal world, we get either an offensive tackle or a quarterback, and somehow the Bears ended up with both who I believe, you know, I ranked in the first round, and actually I put Justin Fields as quarterback number 2 ahead of Zach Wilson, and so I'm elated at this point. Cornerback is a huge need with Kyle Fuller exiting to Denver. That is a big need. Trufant is a good player, but not at the caliber in any way, shape, or form of Kyle Fuller. Bears fans are pretty upset about that now. The Andy Dalton contract looks terrible. The fact that you were able to get him and you maybe could have kept Kyle Fuller and not signed Andy Dalton. Then Nick Foles is helping Justin Fields along. That would have made a whole lot more sense. So while we're all praising Ryan Pace this morning, it's not the same as like, hey, he's done a perfect job here. I would love to see the Bears pick up another wide receiver, just someone, anyone late round, something along those lines. A linebacker, a parent to Danny Trevathan, who is starting to age out quite a bit. Anyone next to Roquan Smith, that's going to be a fun linebacker duo. But at this point of the game, guys, it's really hard to say that, like, if at this point everything else feels like an extra. Whatever the Bears get, I'm already so happy with the first 2 picks.
Any more questions, Ryan?
Yeah, I've got a question. Like you say, you mentioned wide receiver. You've got Allen Robinson, but there seems to be some sort of to-ing and fro-ing. Like say, signed his tag, but will he be there next year? And then I found it quite bizarre that Anthony Miller was on the trade block. You essentially said, someone please come and take him off our hands. So going into next year, like you say, wide receiver potentially be an issue because there's no guarantee that either of those guys will be there.
I think the Allen Robinson thing has a little bit more to do with the Bears' bad cap situation. And we all know that in 2022, that situation is going to look drastically different. So I think the hope right now is for Bears fans is that Allen Robinson looks at Justin Fields the way that we're looking at Justin Fields. And, he's clearly going to get him the ball. I think Allen Robinson is much more motivated to be here now instead of having Andy Dalton as his QB1, to have Justin Fields as QB1. I think he wants to be here. I think he wants to stay here. Bears fans definitely want him to stay here. Bears fans are really excited about Darnell Mooney. He doesn't drop balls the way that Anthony Miller does. He doesn't punch players with helmets on the way that Anthony Miller does and Javon Wims. It's one of those. It's like literally your coaches say, hey, that guy at the helmet on, don't punch him. And they still do it. And it's so we're kind of a, hey, thank you so much for your time. But the Anthony Miller experiment, I think he would be best served by getting a new, fresh opportunity somewhere else.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
That was one of the more bizarre moments of last season. Just it looked like a really vicious punch, and yet it really didn't seem to do more than like push his helmet a little bit, and he lost it. But
you don't understand. We're all like. We don't understand it. It happened twice in one season from 2 different players. And it just, no one wants to be that. No one wants to have that guy on their team. And, it's been difficult to cheer for him when he talks a big game, but again, he's been plagued by the drops. And, to have Darnell Mooney, a 5th round draft pick out of Tulane, that has just been stellar. And it got better and better as the season went on. Bears fans are really excited about him. If you could somehow find a big body receiver on the opposite of Allen Robinson, and then you put Darnell Mooney in the slot, man, with David Montgomery, Cole Kmet, Jimmy Graham, and Justin Fields, I can't believe I'm going to say this to you guys, but the Bears might have a good offense.
It might happen. It might happen.
Crazier things have happened.
I don't know, man. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, just to kind of finish up on Matt Nagy, perhaps. We were saying before about keeping his job or not keeping his job, but in terms of the offense that he runs, the first season with Trubisky was the second season, but one of those 2 was stellar. He wasn't showing too much in the same way that perhaps Goff didn't show too much to look very good in the first few years of the Rams. What do you think was the difference between the first few years of Trubisky and the last few years of Trubisky? Was it down to scheme and coach, do you think?
Matt, that is such a brilliant question, and a question I think every Bears fan is asking, because you seemingly got so much out of Mitch Trubisky in 2018, and then not so much in 2019 and 2020. It would appear that in 2018, Matt Nagy took a lot of fun in calling unique plays, play designs, and playing to the strengths of his players as he's getting to know them. And then in 2019 and 2020, made a curious decision, which was, I'm going to start to essentially take that stuff away and make you try to fit into my system. And it's been a big knock amongst Bears fans on Matt Nagy. Just we're not really thrilled with the way in which that guy has not necessarily utilized the talents. Is one of the reasons why he got play calling duties taken away from him late on in the season in 2020. Bill Lazor coming in from Cincinnati, doing an excellent job using the run game, using that play action, which is Mitch's strengths. And we look at 2019, and at one point, the Bears were playing the Saints, and Mitch Trubisky dropped back 50 times. If you have a struggling quarterback, you don't make him do that. And it's really, really quite simple. So it's fascinating to think in 2018, Matt Nagy could do no wrong, and in 2020, we were all just calling for him to be fired. The BU mentality, which he puts all over the place, is something that we really admired at first, but he just seems reluctant to change, to adapt to the strength of the players that he has.
That's exactly the same thing I've seen in Sean McVay. That, it's this guy who's an absolute offensive genius, and look how good his teams look, and then he decides that he knows best, and suddenly the team doesn't look so good, and it doesn't. It looks like the coach is almost at loggerheads with maybe the GM in terms of the roster building, because if you want to take it your own way, you've got to get players which are going to fit your system, and either one's falling down or the other's falling down, but you're a team and should be working together.
Yeah, no, 100%. As you're saying that, I'm thinking about Shanahan in San Francisco is the exact opposite. That guy finds a way to win with bottom of the barrel quarterbacks. They seem like they're in games at all times, and their offense is still cooking, with CJ Beathard and, whoever else it might be throwing the football that week, just finding a way to utilize his players' strengths. And it's frustrating when it says, no, my system is what you should do. I think good coaching is finding a way to kind of adapt to both that system that you want to run and the strengths of the players that you have in front of you.
Any final questions, Ryan?
Yeah, one final one. If I'm going to put you on the spot here, if you had to look at what you've seen from day 1 to what's going on, I'm not going to ask you for record, but how do you think the NFC North will finish position-wise?
Man, Ryan, it's such a great question.
Do you think it changed? The records last year?
Yes. Very, very much so. So again, it's so funny as I actually had a friend on who covers the Lions, and we talked a little bit about it, and to say, hey, where do you see the finish? And initially I said Packers on top, then the Vikings, then the Bears, then the Lions. But man, I don't know. This things have changed dramatically over the last couple of weeks here, and especially over this weekend with the Aaron Rodgers news. The Packers just not seemingly drafting really, really well, and obviously with the excitement over in Chicagoland. So gut reaction as a fan, sure, I'm going to say it's a 3-way race between the Vikings, the Bears, and the Packers, but realistically, I'm sure that's probably not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of growing pains. And in all honesty, for Lions fans, getting Sewell in the first round, I truly applaud. I know that isn't the sexy pick, so to speak, but I mean, that is a generational talent at tackle, and just thinking, Jared Goff, who's not the most mobile quarterback in the world. Like, I'm excited to see what he does for you guys, truly.
Yeah, I think we've given him the best chance to succeed there. Definitely, absolutely. And thank you so much for giving us your time. We're really appreciative of it. Is there anything you'd like to plug or anything before you go?
Well, first and foremost, Matt and Ryan, I just want to say thank you guys for having me on. I really, truly appreciate it. I know this is a big undertaking that you guys have done, inviting all these people on, and man, just to keep it rocking and rolling. I have the utmost respect for all the UK fans of the NFL. Truly, guys, anytime you happen to make it to the Midwest, if you're in the Chicagoland area, I will happily buy you guys a beer, and we'll have a bit of food, and we'll talk about the game. So if you don't mind, yeah, at some point you can follow me on Twitter at BDR Dengel. Check out beardownreport.com for anything Chicago Bears. And guys, truly, thank you so very much for this morning. I really, truly appreciate the opportunity.
It's great. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yeah. Take care, guys.
You too.
Be well.
Take care. Bye.
What a great guy.
Yeah, I think it was my favourite interview. He was just so friendly.
I love that. I love that very much. And Chicago is a place I definitely want to visit. It's meant to be one of those.
Yeah, it does look cool, doesn't it?
Yeah. All right. So let's have a look at round 2 before we bring on our 49er fan in about 10 minutes time. So, shall I read them out? It's a big undertaking. There's a lot of picks. We actually, I'll go for it. So we kicked off round 3 with Jacksonville at 65 for Andre Cisco. Minnesota took Kellen Mond at 66. Houston for Davis Mills at 67. Atlanta, Jalen Mayfield. Cincinnati, Joseph Asai. Carolina, Brady Christensen. The Giants took Aaron Robinson. Detroit then took Aleem McNeil. Philadelphia took Milton Williams. Washington took Benjamin St-Juste. Dallas took Osa Odigizua. I'm going to say
that. Odigizua.
New Orleans took Paulson Adebo. The Chargers for Josh Palmer. Minnesota for Chaz Surratt. Vegas back-to-back Malcolm Kuntz and Divine Diablo. Miami took Hunter Long. Washington for Diami Brown. Carolina Tommy Tremble. Dallas Chauncey Golston. Green Bay then took Amari Rogers. Minnesota for Wyatt Davis. Pittsburgh for Kendrick Green. San Francisco Trey Sermon. Houston Nico Collins. Minnesota for Patrick Jones. Cleveland took Anthony Schwartz. Tennessee for Monty Rice. Buffalo Spencer Brown. Baltimore Ben Cleveland. Tampa Bay Robert Hainsey. New England Ronnie Perkins. The Chargers took Trey McKitty. Denver for Quinn Miners. Dallas Sean Wright. Tennessee for Elijah Molden. Detroit took Ifatu Melifonwu. San Francisco for Ambry Thomas. The Rams for Ernest Jones. Baltimore for Brandon Stevens. And Denver finally at 105 for Baron Browning. What sticks out to you in terms of, I said good and bad there in the second round and again in the third, best and worst?
I'll jump in the third. One pick I do like is I like Josh Palmer. I like the Tennessee to the Chargers. I think that is a very solid pickup. He is going to be someone that is going to potentially take over straight away from Mike Evans, because Mike Evans, we know he deals with injuries very often, and Hunter Henry's gone. Keenan Allen is going to need some help, and Josh, he's a big body, he's strong. I expect him to be able to win on the outside. Not necessarily the best in separation, but when you've got someone that can compete like he can, I think with Justin Herbert, they're going to quickly form quite a good bond, and that is someone that is going to take a lot of pressure off the likes of Keenan Allen.
I think he's a day one starter, and when I look at his physical attributes, production, what he's good at, I think Kenny Golladay. It just seems a natural fit in terms of comp for me. All right.
I'll go one extra pick as well. Mm-hmm. It's not good. It's not bad. But I understand it. It's Davis Mills. I understand the Texans right now with what's going on in the scenario. There is a reserve. He's the backup plan. If anything develops in the Deshaun Watson story, they potentially need a guy that can learn on the job. And if not, if they do have reservations about moving on from him in the future, he can sit and learn either way. So whether he plays this year, next year, if he never plays, I do understand that pick. It makes sense to protect the integrity of the offensive room. Having another body there, someone is going to take the impossible job of stepping in at very short notice.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of big reach, is the obvious one I think you mentioned earlier, Malcolm Kuntz. Just not on my board whatsoever. Taken at 79 by Vegas. That's a long way down. Anthony Schwartz seemed like a massive reach. 91 to Cleveland, 151 on my board, and Monty Rice with several better linebackers for me going to Tennessee at 92. Trey McKitty as well to the Chargers. You were saying about tight ends and needing to give them some relief there, and he's a good receiving tight end, but taken 97th, 216 on the board. And Dallas for Nahshon Wright, another one that just baffles me. There's some all-time reaches in this day two, and maybe this is because of the lack of 2020 tape and us, the media guys and the amateurs at home, not really being able to evaluate these guys very well. But can the media get it this far wrong that guys in the mid 200s are being taken in the mid third round? It's baffling to me.
It is, and I think using the COVID opt-out lack of film, they're going to end up using that as an excuse later on for taking players that just shouldn't have been taken where they are. If you look at Nahshon Wright, look who got took behind him: Elijah Molden, Melifonwu, Ambry Thomas, and Brandon Stevens. So they pounced on a guy that was taken probably 100 places too soon, and then corners that had slid so far, then rattled off the board. Like it's baffling.
I do think that Molden is potentially my favourite pick of the third round at pick 100. He's listed as a safety. I think he played 2 games there in his college career, but actually played the majority as slot corner. And I just think the value is there. He didn't test particularly well, I don't think. But
no, he tested poorly.
Yeah, but in terms of what he's flashed on film,
Washington, good defensive backs as well. You've only got to look at the last few years, like Taylor Rapp, the safety. Like they are a good defensive school, and they produce pro-ready secondary players usually.
Another player I think that I would rank as perhaps in my best of the third round might be Dyami Brown at 82 to Washington. He fell 24 places from where I thought he would be taken. Extremely productive wide receiver, probably going to line up in the slot, but maybe might be able to do a little bit for you on the outside as well. What do you think about him?
I think when you look at the Browns are getting scary good. You look at, they've already got Steve Sims, they've got Terry McLaurin on the outside. So there you've got the help on the outside. And then when you put someone in like Dyami Brown, who for all intents and purposes, he's going to take the roof off a lot of defenses. He's a burner. I think that is going to give some massive investment inside, and also I expect him to chip in the return game as well. So you're getting probably a dual threat there, a good value at that round.
Yeah, absolutely. If Lee is ready, I think we're going to introduce our final guest of the afternoon, Lee from 49er Faithful UK. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, not bad, Matthew. How are you?
Doing very well. A bit bleary-eyed this morning and suffering with a sleep deprivation. But there we go. Thank you so much for coming on and donating your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself to kick us off?
Okay, so my name's Lee Gowland. I've been running the 49er Faithful UK group since 2015. The group's actually been around since 2010. We've got a really good group of admins there. There's quite a few of us. We have meetups during the season. We try to make it with a regular season game, but obviously we West Coast based, so it's difficult because all of our games tend to be late on. So it's difficult to try and get somewhere that'll show the game that late on. But yeah, we're trying to have meetups. We are regularly online together. Last night we were on a Zoom call until 5 o'clock this morning. And to be honest, that Zoom call, I think we were all very underwhelmed with the way day 2 went. Day 1, we were over the moon about day 1 with the Trey Lance pick. But yeah, last night seemed to be a long night that didn't yield the results that we were expecting, to be honest.
So let's examine that a little bit more. Trey Lance at 3, you obviously gave up the house, the farm, and everything in between to move up. Do you think that was the intention overall? There were rumours that the head coach was enamoured with someone else and everyone else was pulling for Trey Lance. It seemed like the media and everyone else thought that you should take Fields. So between the men in the room, the media, and the other guy, you're all pulling for someone else. Do you think it was the right decision?
Yes. So I think the wrong decision would have been Mac Jones. I think he was the wrong person, definitely for the fan base. So the way we run our group, the 49er Faithful UK, we try and stay away from any conflict and try to keep it positive. I think had Mac Jones have been the pick there at number 3, I'd have had my work cut out for us for the next few weeks, trying to calm everybody down. So as far as who Shanahan wanted it and the rumours. What we found since Shanahan and Lynch came in 4 years ago is there's no leaks at all that come out of Santa Clara. So the rumours are purely speculation, people trying to join the dots together and doing a really bad job of it, which is great for us because as 49er fans, we knew this was all rumours. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Shanahan would have had his own thoughts on that all the way through. I do believe that Lance was his number one target all the way through. The fact that they came out and said Jimmy will be the starter next season, we knew it was going to be a development guy. So that takes away Mac Jones because Mac Jones can easily start day one. So that took him out of the way. Justin Fields, I had kind of the same feeling. I thought, you know what, he could probably start day one as well. And if I'm honest, I actually wanted us to take Justin Fields, but I'm actually happy with Trey Lance. There's a few concerns about Justin Fields. He holds on to the ball too long. His release time was 3.2 seconds, average release. He's got to be quicker than that in the NFL. He had these health issues that came out. They weren't too much of a concern, but I can understand why a GM might have been scared off taking him at number 3. When they find out he's got epilepsy. What was the other one? I had 3 things that kind of swayed us away from Justin Fields.
There were character concerns that he was the last in the building, first out, but I think that they were backtracked pretty quickly on. I didn't look too much into that, but that is the other thing I think that might have factored in, maybe.
So, I mean, so I heard those rumours as well, but Justin Fields was one of these guys that actually campaigned to get the Big Ten playing this year, or last season.
Yeah.
So I don't think work ethic or actually wanting to play, I don't think that would have been an issue.
No.
But at the end of the day, I mean, we took Trey Lance. The concern I have about Trey Lance is he's still very young. He's only played 1 full season, and that was his junior year. So potentially, if he's going to sit behind Jimmy for the first season, that's 2 years where he hasn't really had any competitive football. So that's a little bit of a concern. But then when you watch him, I can understand why Shanahan liked him. His footwork is great. His arm strength is unbelievable. I was watching some highlights the other day, and with a flick of the wrist, and he'd thrown it 70 yards through the air without any effort whatsoever, and it was just unbelievable. So I'm really excited. I think it's a really good pick. I'm glad that we're going to keep Jimmy for another year at least, and it's going to be interesting to see how we do next season. Because to be honest, last season we were absolutely decimated with injuries. Yet our defense, which was the biggest hit, our defense was still a number 5 defense. So the defense played at a decent level to get us into the playoffs. The thing that we were missing was a decent backup quarterback, because we can't rely on Jimmy being fit. And it's not Jimmy's quality as a quarterback. Jimmy can win. He can. He's proven that. He is a winner. It's just that the one attribute you want from a player in his position is availability. And he just hasn't had it over the years. So I can understand why they're doing what they are doing. Obviously, when you look at Jimmy, he doesn't have that big throw ability either. But again, because of the way the 49ers play, the way Shanahan schemes everything, you don't necessarily need that big player. It's great to have it. I mean, I'm not going to turn down a quarterback that has this big playability, who can put it into a small window and actually win the game on his own. But that was never asked of Jimmy. So I understand why Shanahan has gone down the route to bring somebody else in. I can't see Trey Lance starting day one. I might be wrong, but I can't see it.
No, I do think that he could be a starter this year. I think that that one thing I've seen from Lance is, although he's very inexperienced, he's probably going to be instantly one of the smartest guys on the team. He's a fanatic, as far as I've been led to believe from the media, in terms of the fact that he just spends pretty much all of his time learning the game, watching tape. He's a madman for it, much in the sort of Tom Brady sort of fashion of a student of the game. So I think if anyone can get there quickly, it might be him. Do you think that Jimmy's had an unfair bit of flack thrown at him? Because I think the Super Bowl year for you, he led you to it, and I think that he actually played quite a big part in it, contrary to perhaps what people say about Goff now. Obviously, that we have Goff, and people say, oh, he took them to a Super Bowl. And I don't actually think that he was a massive part of that. Whereas I think Jimmy was a big part of what he did for you. Yeah. But then late in the playoffs, Shanahan took decision making out of his hands and says, right, we're going to run the ball for the last 2 games, pretty much, and you take the back seat. Do you think that Jimmy now gets a kind of bad rap because everyone remembers those last 2 games of the season rather than the 18 or so that preceded it?
Yeah, I mean, it's natural because of the position he plays that if you get to a Super Bowl, then you look at the quarterback. Why didn't the quarterback win that game? But for me, that game was definitely not Jimmy's loss. To me, the defense gave up. Sorry, they didn't give up. The defense thought they'd already won the game when they got that last interception from Mahomes at the start of the 4th quarter. And you could see they were just far too cocky about it. And for me, they just sat back. They thought, right, game over. Fantastic. And they got smacked in the mouth for it. So it's definitely not Jimmy. But to answer your question, I do think he gets a lot of unfair flack about that. People seem to forget the game against the New Orleans Saints, where they stopped us running the ball and Jimmy outgunned Drew Brees. He actually he put on a show there, a passing display, and it was fantastic. He won us that game, and people seem to forget that. And that was on the road in the Superdome in an intimidating atmosphere, and he absolutely balled out.
Yeah, he definitely can do it. You talked about having an underwhelming day 2. You took
Yeah.
Aaron Banks at 48, Trey Sermon at 88, and Ambry Thomas at 102. What were you perhaps looking for, and what don't you see in the guys that you have taken to be disappointed?
So as far as the guys we've taken, I think the guys that we've taken will do fine, but I think the first 2 don't fill needs of priority. So all of our cornerbacks came back on 1-year contracts, so we managed to get Verrett, Mosley, Williams back. They're all out the door next year. It's debatable whether or not we'll be able to re-sign them. So we really needed to prioritize cornerback, and we didn't do that. So at 43, we could have had the likes of Asante Samuel, or we could have gone safety, which is also a need, and taken Trevon Moehrig. But we didn't. We went with a guard. And to me, we actually filled our biggest need on O-line in free agency when we brought in an experienced center who can help the other guys. Because our O-line isn't as bad as what everybody makes it out to be. And I mean, Mike McGlinchey gets a lot of flack because his pass protection isn't great, which we know, but we were running team, and he's one of the highest graded run protectors in the league. I think he graded 2nd. So that people seem to forget this. I think with Mike McGlinchey, if you put on a bit of weight, it would be a lot better for his pass protection because he gets bull rushed too often. So we've got a problem there, and we know we've got a problem there. We haven't brought in Aaron Banks to get rid of that problem because Aaron Banks is going to play a guard. And ironically enough, it was Mike McGlinchey who never shut up about Aaron Banks to John Lynch and convinced him to take him. But I think Aaron Banks, we could have easily have gotten him at 102. I think it's a hell of a reach to take him at 48. But John Lynch has come out and said, had they not traded back from 43, they'd have taken Aaron Banks there as well. So that to me was a little bit disappointing. It looks like a bit of a reach that. There was plenty of what I would say would be game-changing players available. And I've already named 2 of them, Asante Samuel Jr. and Trevon Moehrig. Just before I came on live, that I could hear you talking about Elijah Molden, who went at 100. That's who I was hoping we would take at 102. I was absolutely gutted, and I can't believe he fell to 100. And then we've got our trade up into 88, and we take Trey Sermon. Again, Trey Sermon, he'd have been available there at 117, and we traded that pick away with 121. So I just feel as though we haven't made the best use of our picks on day 2. We aren't getting the value that we could have had, and we're not addressing the needs that the fans think priorities, the likes of cornerback and safety. So that was disappointing. But then they pulled that back a little bit with 102, bringing in Ambry Thomas, and I thought that was an excellent pick. And yeah. I think he fell a lot further than what I was expecting him to fall. I was expecting him to go around about 60, 70. So I thought that was a good pickup.
Yeah, so
and it kind of brought the day 2 back a little bit. It gives a little bit more value after the disappointing reaches.
Yeah, I had him at 103 on my consensus board of where people might go. I kind of just built one by myself with the major organizations aggregated. So I think he went, for me, about roughly where I thought he would. But the thing about him is, I think he has a very low floor. He obviously opted out of 2020.
Yeah.
And he's a bit raw, but his ceiling is very, very high. He's a boom or bust player, but he's in an organisation that obviously coaches very, very well. And if he's sitting for a year because you have cornerbacks in place already, I think he's in the best situation to succeed. I agree with you. I think it's a really shrewd pick. Yeah. Ryan, do you have any thoughts? Any questions?
Afternoon, Lee. My question is, you've just lost one of the possibly the best defensive minds right now in the game, Robert Saleh. He'd always looked destined to move on head coach. How do you feel that is going to change the defense at all? Do you think that is going to have any effects, or what he's put in place will just carry on as normal, like he never left? Because he was such an energetic guy on the sideline.
He was.
He was always getting involved and everything. I loved him. I wanted him as head coach, but the Jets have got a good guy, I think.
So, to be honest, I don't think it's going to affect us that much, because we'd already brought in his replacement the year before in DeMeco Ryans. We knew fine well that Robert Saleh was going to get a head coaching job very, very soon. We were actually quite surprised to keep him last year. As far as being one of the best defensive minds, I would say the jury's out on that as a 49ers fan, because for the first 2 seasons, defensively, we were absolutely garbage. And the only reason that changed was because we got Nick Bosa, and having a pass rush completely changed the way our defensive backs played. It gave them a lot more time to basically stop the wide receivers. So I don't particularly think there was a huge jump in the way Saleh coached the teams. I think it was the personnel on the field actually matched the system that we needed to play. And the fact that we brought in DeMeco Ryans, who plays exactly the same system, there's going to be very little change. I think the biggest miss we're going to have this season is actually losing the leadership of Richard Sherman. Not necessarily a player, because, to be honest, I mean, in the Super Bowl, he was smoked 5 for 5, and he has lost that bit pace. And I was kind of hoping that he might change to safety. He might switch over to safety, because he's lost that little bit pace, but he's got the vision. He's got the football brain about him. And I think he could do exactly the same as what Ronnie Lott did, move over to safety and still be an all-pro at safety as well as a cornerback.
Makes a lot of sense. Logan Ryan did that, didn't he? He moved to safety. When you lose that speed backwards, you can make up for it coming downhill. Just going to say, you mentioned Nick Bosa, but for me, when I watch the 49ers, and I'm going to be putting money on this, my dark horse for the defensive player of the year has got to be Fred Warner. He is an outstanding linebacker. He is a do-it-all, everything kind of guy. My question is, though, how do you feel the dynamic in the NFC West has changed? Who's stocking up? Who's going down? Because from what I've seen, Seattle drafted another wide receiver. I don't feel like they're doing any help in the Russell Wilson situation, but Stafford's obviously joined the division now. It's arguably maybe one of the best divisions in football.
Yeah.
How do you see it panning out?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. And I don't know if all fans will say this, but I still think the 49ers got the strongest roster in that division, without a shadow of a doubt. When I look at what Seattle's done, you're right, they brought in a wide receiver. They didn't particularly have a problem throwing the ball or getting touchdowns, so I don't know why they've done that. I know they've made some moves in the offseason to try and help the defense. They re-signed Carlos Dunlap. They brought in Aldon Smith for approximately 24 hours before he got done on a charge. Who else? They brought in our cornerback Witherspoon. So Spoon, we had a Marmite relationship with Spoon. You either loved him or you hated him. I can guarantee you the Seattle Seahawks will get 3 good games from him a season. But that'll be about it, because that's all we ever had of him. We had about 3 good games where it wasn't just good, but it was elite games. He was absolutely outstanding. And then he'd go missing for the rest of the season, and he'd do some really stupid mistakes. So I don't particularly think Seattle have addressed the problems they have, which is good for us. You look at the Cardinals. So the Cardinals have brought in a coverage guy as linebacker, Savin Collins. So I think that was a very, very good move for them. However, I said exactly the same about Isaiah Simmons last year. And to be honest, he was absolutely garbage against us both times. And I was disappointed because I actually had him down as defensive rookie of the year before the season started. I thought that was a really good move. So he was disappointing. They brought in wide receivers again. And they've got a really good wide receiver core. So they're building on strength, but they're not really attacking some of the weaknesses they've got. So that was a strange one. And then you look at the Rams, and to be honest, the Rams I'm not worried about because I think Shanahan's got McShay's number. They just can't do anything against us. Aaron Donald, he's been absolutely absent the last 4 games against us, the last 2 seasons. And he was absolutely owned last season. Matt Stafford does worry us because I can guarantee you, had they had Matt Stafford last year, they'd have probably beaten us both games. I think it was the connection, the usually reliable connection between Goff and Cooper Kupp that let them down in the games against us last season. They were reasonably close, but I've got to be honest, I think we will win that division again. I think we will go deep into the playoffs, and if we don't have any injuries, I think we're Super Bowl bound again.
Yeah, I completely agree, actually. I think you're going to go under the radar because of what happened last year, but I would totally agree with you. I think the Rams have drafted poorly, and I think that Stafford is going to take a season to kind of bed into that offense. And also, you don't know how they're going to mesh head coach and quarterback. Seattle look like they're imploding from the inside and trying to patch it up. But I just think the relationship is so far gone now that I don't see it working particularly well on the field, especially if Wilson takes a couple of hits early. I think he's going to mentally check out. And Arizona, I'm not sold on Kingsbury. He's someone who came in with a lot of promise. This air raid offense, right? Let's get the 4 best wide receivers we can find in the league and an amazing quarterback, and that's going to be our offense. And yet the passing game hasn't actually been up to much. They're just using the 1 wide receiver pretty much. So you are a well-rounded offense and defense, can win in multiple ways, and now you've got a couple of quarterbacks who can come in if you have to, and you have to put Trey Lance in because of an injury in week 2, I still think that's going to work quite well. So.
Yeah, to be honest, I do as well. I'd prefer he does sit. So go back to 2005 when we picked up Alex Smith, and he didn't start straight away. I can't think he remembers. I think it was game 5. Game 5, Alex Smith came in, started, and I think it was just far too soon. I think he needed to sit for a year. But then we had the whole, he's gone through 6-7 coordinators in the first 6-7 seasons, so that didn't help him. And I don't want to see that happen with Trey Lance.
No,
I want to see him have some consistency, sit and learn, because we don't need him to start because Jimmy can win games.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think I read somewhere it was either first or second. Lance is the youngest player, I think, in the entire draft potentially. He's literally just gone 20. So, like you say, you need an offensive coordinator that's going to stay there and put an arm around him. I don't expect him to play until, well, now we've got an extension to the season, 17 games. You wouldn't want to see Lance until maybe at least week 10 or 11 if things aren't going well.
So he actually turns 21 next weekend, Lance. But he is still the youngest. Yeah. And he's had the fewest passing attempts ever to be taken in the first round.
That's an amazing stat.
Yeah.
I mean, especially considering we've had in our own division Mitchell Trubisky, who only played 17 games in his college career.
13.
Yeah.
13. So that's staggering. But I really am pulling for you guys actually in that division. I know a lot of other Lions fans will be kind of Rams fans now as their second team because of Stafford, but I've always liked how the 49ers run their organization. And, you know, I wish you the best for the season. Thank you so much for donating us your time today. It's been
no problem.
Great to talk to you, man.
Yeah,
thank you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Lee.
No problem. Good luck in the rest of the draft and good luck next season, guys.
And see you.
You
See you
too.
later.
Cheers.
Bye.
What a nice afternoon we've had. I love that.
Yeah, that's 2 good interviews back to back.
Any final thoughts, perhaps, maybe on Detroit's picks just before we check out?
Yeah, I mentioned a few guys in the chat. Like there's a few linebackers there. If Jabril Cox goes, like I say, there's Cameron McGrone, and there was a Rumpf that looks quite a disruptive kind of guy from Duke. He's one of the highest left on the board. But I do like there's going to be a sneaky pick. I think we've got to address for wide receiver depth, even if we're only going to put 2 guys on the outside and have 2 to set. So someone like Tyler Wallace is there, and he has got a lot of upside. So I want to address at least one of them, either a linebacker and a wide receiver. If we don't do either, I will have reservations about where they see the position going forward. But also, we do have cap space, so I'm not devastated. We will, once all this shakes out with the draft, free agency will become a lot more clear.
Yeah, I'm looking to the undrafted free agent group as well, because there's so many of these guys that are being reached for down low, which means that some people that we expect to be drafted aren't going to be, and we're going to take between 12 and 15 undrafted free agents. So, this doesn't just end with day 3. I think we're going to fill out a lot of our roster and perhaps get 1 or 2 fringe rotational guys from that undrafted free agent class. So
I agree. Last year we didn't take advantage. I don't know if it was a weak undrafted free agent class or we just didn't target it very well. I think we took 2 safeties. We took Hunter Bryant, but we knew he had injury issues all through college. He did his whole rookie year. He's now had his designation flipped, so we don't know if we're going to see him again. So there's going to be some hidden gems this year. It's just finding that diamond.
Yeah, absolutely right. Thank you so much for joining me, man, this afternoon. Thank you to everyone for watching. We'll see you at 4:30 for day 3. That's 11:30 Eastern time in the States. Until then, bye for now.
Bye, guys.